Sorry, 1 minute. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد بارك صل عليه. Alhamdulillah, after praising Allah Almighty and sending salutations upon the best of creation, the beloved of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, my dear respected listeners of Me Madad YouTube channel, we welcome you and we also bid you assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And alhamdulillah, we got our first guest, mashallah, our sponsors as well of these two events which we have done. Part one was last week where our Imam Sahib, our Sheikh Salim Muhammad, mashallah, elaborated on the topic of will and importance of will and inheritance on Islamic topic, which is much neglected, as Sheikh pointed out last week. Those of you who have missed the first part, you can download it from our channel and watch it, where Sheikh had elaborated on how important this topic is and how the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has stated that this is the topic, one of the topics which the ulama say that it will be lifted. I'll be lifted from the ummah towards the end times. And I asked Sheikh about this, and Sheikh said that basically this is the reason, because there's much greed and love of dunya, the love of the world, and this causes much distress to people. And also people don't like talking about it. There's a bit of a taboo area, people don't like mentioning, not sitting with their father or mother or parents and saying, about the inheritance, what do you want to do? And, after when they are passed on, and then you see you have to follow the law of the land or it's divided against Sharia. So it's a very important topic. Part one was concluded last, and we said we will continue with the legal aspect. And today, one of our main sponsors, Maple Brook Wills, who mashallah sponsored our event last week as well and this week as well, are key supporters of Me Madad welfare, and is a respected Hafiz Quran. Mashallah, he's got the Quran in his heart, is blessed with the blessings of the deen knowledge as well, and also the knowledge of the world as well, the dunya knowledge as well, and is an expert of will writing and advising people, and they provide other services as well. And I'm sure when Hafiz Saab comes on, Hafiz Hassan Ali will come on and elaborate the facilities and the services they provide, and especially around will writing and advice on inheritance according to Islam and according to the law of the land. So today our topics are going to be surrounding this area. और तमाम हज़रात से गुजारिश है मुख्तसरन पंजाबी उर्दू में भी गुफ्तगू की जाएगी, क्योंकि ये टॉपिक आपने समात किया होगा लास्ट वीक के, बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक है और बहुत ही आइन मसाइल ने जो हम इस पर नहीं सीखते तो फिर इसमें गुनाह का भी आ जाता है, हराम का भी हुक्म है, इसमें हराम का भी हुक्म जारी हो जाता है। तो फिर जो हमारे प्यारे इस दुनिया से चल बसते हैं वो कल क़यामत के दिन कोई फंस ना जाए, इसलिए हमें ये सीखना चाहिए और दूसरों तक पहुंचाना भी चाहिए। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हमारे शेख सलीम साहब ने लास्ट वीक बहुत अच्छे अंदाज में इस्लामी गुफ्तगू की, तमाम आपको मसाइल समझाए। तो इस हफ्ते भी वो आ रहे हैं, हमारे साथ ज्वाइन करेंगे, मगर आज का जो सेकंड पार्ट है वो ज़्यादा लीगल एस्पेक्ट है। और माशाल्लाह हमारे हाफिज हसन साहब, जिनके पीछे हम तरावी पढ़ते रहे हैं रज़ा मस्जिद प्रेस्टन में, और माशाल्लाह उन्होंने दीन और दुनिया की तालीम हासिल की है और वो ये सर्विस को अंजाम दे रहे हैं कि अपने लोगों को ये समझ चले कि ये दीन और दीन के मुताबिक भी अपनी वसीयत का नामा बनाएं और उसके साथ साथ इस मुल्क के कानून के मुताबिक भी होना चाहिए। तो गुजारिश है कि प्लीज़ इस मसले नू बड़े अहम समझ कर इनू सुने, क्योंकि ये ज़्यादा तौर पर हराम हलाल दा मसला है, फ़र्ज़ आइन दा मसला है। तो इस वजह तुहानू अपना वसीयत करने का तरीका तुहानू समझना चाहिए। तो इंशाअल्लाह Hafiz Sahab, I will request you before you start. Normally I do a little bit portion of the recitation, But if you don't mind, would you recite any portion for the blessings,
Yeah, of
and
course.
we can hear your beautiful voice again as reciting the Quran, mashallah, and also learning from you. Jazakallah khairan. Hafiz Hassan from Maplebrook, Wales, our sponsors.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون.
Subhanallah.
ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صدق الله العظيم. Kamran Bhai, just a translation here. The first ayat was, "O you who believe, seek comfort in patience and prayer. Allah is truly with those who are patient. Never say that those martyred in the cause of Allah are dead. In fact, they are alive, but you do not perceive it. We will certainly test you with a touch of fear and famine and loss of property, life, and crops. Give good news to those who are patiently enduring, and who, when faced with a disaster, say, surely to Allah we belong, and to Him we shall return."
MashaAllah, Subhanallah, MashaAllah, beautifully recited, brought some beautiful memories from your recitation when you used to lead us in Taraweeh in Ramadan. MashaAllah. Now, respected Hafizah, we request you for 10-15 minutes if you can elaborate the services and how will writing is according to the law of the land as well, and touching on Islamic as well, because obviously you have to master both. You have to take when you compile will. So I'll put you back on, Shoaib Bhai, if you could put Hafiz Saban, Hafiz Hassan Ali, and he will talk a little bit about that. In the meantime, we are brothers and sisters. If you want to send in questions, please send in your questions that we can ask. And Sheikh Salim will be joining us shortly as well, so we can ask the respected scholar as well and the expert Hafiz as well on will writing or any questions you have regarding inheritance. Jazakallah khairan. Brother Shoaib, can you put the telephone number on, the mobile number for brothers and sisters, so they can see on the screen, so they can text us or basically send us any messages they want regarding inheritance and will writing. Jazakallah khairan, Hafizah, for joining us.
If we can get the presentation online on the screen from page 1, please. Jazakallah.
So it's on.
Yeah. Jazakallah. Firstly, Kamran Bhai and all our listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think you've praised me a little bit too much there, but alhamdulillah, jazakallah for that. I really appreciate the kind words. I have prepared a small presentation. As you can imagine, both the Islamic side and the English legal side is extremely complicated in certain situations.
Of
So
course.
I have tried to keep it very basic for our listeners so that they understand at least the simplified version of how it works in the English legal system. And then inshallah, both me and Sheikh Salim Muhammad, we can answer any questions. So Shoaiba, if you can go on the next slide, please. So I thought I'd start off with some statistics. Just bear in mind that these statistics are only for England and Wales.
Of
And
course.
any legalities I talk about as well, they are only for England and Wales because Scotland have their own laws in regards to inheritance. So as you can see, what 1/4 of 55 to 65-year-olds have personal experience of the human and economic costs associated with intestacy. Intestacy is where somebody passes away without a will. So obviously it's a lot more costly than having a will in place. Secondly, 1 million people know of situations where somebody's assets have gone to the wrong person. So, if you've, especially in terms of Islamic inheritance, if you're planning on leaving it to certain heirs, 1 million people in this country know that they've gone to the people that they didn't want it to go to. Even though these two instances have taken place, 27.5 million adults in England and Wales still don't have a will. That's 64% of people over the age of 18 in England and Wales. It's a massive, massive number. And I just found out yesterday, actually, in fact, I didn't put it in the presentation, but I just found out yesterday that the biggest intestacy rates, as in people who don't have a will, the biggest rates are in the northwest, in our area, in Lancashire. And I was really surprised by this. Next slide, please. So I'll just move on to why you should have a will in place, or at the very basic, some sort of estate plan in place. Firstly, the estate will be distributed according to your wishes, or in our case, according to Allah's wishes, which are mentioned in the Quran, of course. Secondly, it gives peace of mind. I've put peace of mind in inverted commas because the term is used very loosely. Certain people get peace of mind for different things. In our situation, we should get peace of mind for doing it according to the Sharia. So the third thing is we can avoid the rules of intestacy, which again I mentioned. If you pass away without a will, it means you passed away intestate. The fourth thing is if you have children under the age of 18, you can mention inside your will who you wish to appoint, who you wish for them to look after them once you are gone. If both you and husband and wife pass away, together, or only a few years apart, and you still have children under the age of 18, you can appoint guardians inside your will. IHT is inheritance tax. So ideally, we want to mitigate as much inheritance tax as possible. So that's something we can also work towards. Sometimes a simple will doesn't do the job for inheritance tax, but again, it's different for each case. And the next part, which is really, again, extremely important for us Muslims, is explaining your funeral wishes inside your will. Now, obviously, I can't name any names, but I have had many clients who have come to me and said, look, we've had a family member who's got, for example, people from different sects of Islam or different religions even. And when this person passes away, their funeral wishes are not clear, and the families start arguing. They need to be buried here. We need to send the body to Pakistan or India, etc., etc. So if your funeral wishes are inside your will with all the inheritance stuff, then you can easily explain exactly what you want post passing away. And the final thing, obviously, there's loads of other benefits, but like I said, trying to keep it simple. The final thing I've mentioned is the speed of the administration. And I've written potentially because, of course, it depends on the size of the estate. If you've got, for example, £1 million worth of assets, and those assets are 5 properties, for example, it's a lot quicker to distribute those assets when you have a will, because it's going to avoid so many different conflicts, whether that's conflicts with the law, whether that's conflicts with the Sharia or with the family or any other aspect. We will hopefully, inshallah, be able to avoid those conflicts. Next slide, please, Shoaib. So as I explained before, intestacy means a person passing away without a will. So if you die without a will, it means you died intestate. So the question I get quite often from many clients is, what happens if I don't make a will? This is according to the English law, obviously. So the first thing that the law will look at is, are you married or in a civil partnership? Now, at this point, I wanted to mention something extremely important, which I am seeing in many family situations at the moment. The point is that so many Muslims in this country do not have a civil partnership or a civil wedding. They don't have it. It doesn't exist in their family or in their relationship. They only have the nikah done. But the important thing to note is that a nikah is not recognized by English law. And because of that reason, there's a possibility that your wife will be completely excluded. So worst case scenario is you pass away without a will and you don't have, the law does not recognize your marriage. And I'm not an expert on marriage or immigration or anything, but as far as I am aware, it doesn't recognize nikahs in this country. And if that's the case, then your wife is completely excluded, even if you don't have a will. But let's assume you do have a civil partnership or a civil wedding done, and you do have kids, then your wife will get the first £270,000 of your estate. After that, whatever is left over, your wife is also entitled to half, and it's the same for the husband, the partner rather. The partner is entitled to 1/2 of the remainder. Whatever is left over, the children will share equally. So that's the best case scenario if you don't have a will. But from our point, that doesn't, it's not the same rules as the Islamic Sharia law, the inheritance rules mentioned in the Quran. So just to note on that point, it's extremely important that everybody does have a will, because if you don't, there's a possibility this could happen. Assuming your wife has passed away or your husband has passed away before you and you don't have any children either, then if you can see on the right, there's a list of relatives that the UK law looks at. So the first is obviously the children, then parents, then siblings, then grandparents, then uncles. If none of those are living, then the final resolution is that everything goes to the crown, and the crown is already rich and they just get richer, basically. That's, obviously, inshallah, we want to avoid any of that happening. It's unlikely at the moment that, especially in our culture and our families, that people don't have any of those relatives living when they pass away, but we do see it occasionally. Is that quite clear, Cameron, in terms of the rules? I think you're muted. I can't hear you, Cameron.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're not going to be understanding everything from this presentation our respected expert Hafiz Hassan Ali has presented, because obviously, A, it's only an oversight, and B, it's a bit complicated as well. Everyone's got different situations. So for that reason, that's why we wanted to introduce Hafiz Saab. And Sheikh Salim touched upon it. That's an introduction. That's why we put on our posters as well. It's introduction. So that's quite okay. I've just received in that sense. So basically, what Hafiz Saab has said that if anyone wants this presentation, which Hafiz Saab just put up, they can download that, or you can pass it on, and we can pass it on, or we can put it onto our WhatsApp groups. And basically that way everyone can have access to it. But I'm sure if you go on Hafiz Saab's website as well, or you just go down Hafiz Saab, you are based on Church Street, yes?
No, I'm actually based on the docks. I've got an office on the docks.
Okay, but obviously due to COVID and stuff like that, obviously main work is done through online and through obviously phone communication. So I mean, everything can be explained. We'll put all the details out there. So if you've got any questions, please do ask. तो तमाम से मेहरबानी है कि हाफिज साहब ने मुख्तसरन साढ़े सामने रखा गया है कि प्रेजेंटेशन तुहानू चाहिए हो ये प्रेजेंटेशन तुसी मांग सकते हो तो तुहानू असी इदा दे आंदे इंशाअल्लाह information.
There's a few slides left. I'll just quickly go over those, and then
Okay,
we'll take any further questions. Shoaib, can we have the slide, please? So this is another question which crops up quite often, which is that who can contest the will? So sometimes having a will in place isn't it's not the end of the story. Sometimes it can cause issues for someone passing away. So even having a will in place can do that. So imagine not having a will, how many arguments and how many conflicts it can cause. So in terms of the groups of people that can contest a will or an estate after someone passes away is firstly family members and bloodline relatives. So if you've excluded someone from your estate, there's a high chance that within a year or a couple of years or a couple of months, they will crop up and try to claim something from the estate. The second group of people is someone who was financially dependent on the deceased. So according to the UK, English law, it doesn't matter whether that person is a relative or not. If that person was living with you, or even if they were living separately and they depended on you financially, they have a claim on the estate if they aren't given what they are entitled to, for example. The third one is a beneficiary in an earlier will. So if you made a will in 2015 and you had a brother in that will, and then in 2020 you changed it and took him out, if he's still alive on your death, he could possibly prove that he was taken out of the will because you were influenced by another sibling, for example. And the final two is someone who is owed money, so someone who you owe a debt to, and someone who you promised something to. Next slide, please. So moving on to exactly what a will is, I've just written a small overview. A will, in simple terms, is a written declaration of an individual's wishes regarding what they want to happen after they have died. Primarily, it concerns disposal of assets, but it also can deal with trust, specific legacies, or certain gifts you want to give. Guardianship, I already mentioned before, and funeral wishes, I also mentioned before. Next slide, please. So what do you need to make a will? You need two things. You need to be over the age of 18. And secondly, you need to have 100% full mental capacity. Now, the age of the testator is quite simple. As long as you're over the age of 18, you can do that. But the mental state of the person making the will is a bit more complicated. Sometimes, for example, I have a client who has dementia. For 3 days, he's not feeling well at all. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't even know who he is. But for a couple of days during the week, he's absolutely fine. He's capable and everything. So it's important that the testator, the client, has a sound and disposing mind and memory. I think everybody understands that in their own way. Next slide, please, Shoaib. So there's 8 things that we put in a basic will. The first one is words of commencement. So that is, for example, who's writing the will, what his date of birth is, what his address is, etc., etc. The second one is really important. It's called the revocation clause. The revocation clause just basically means that if you have written a will previously, we are revoking that will. So that will no longer exists, it's terminated. Even if they find a copy of that will after death, they always look at what the latest date is on the will. So whichever will has the latest date, that's the one that will be accepted. The third one is appointment of executors, trustees, and guardians. I covered guardians earlier, but executors and trustees are basically the people you are trusting to distribute your assets according to your wishes. And then the fourth aspect is gifts and legacies. Gifts and legacies just basically mean it could be gifts of property, gifts of anything like jewelry, personal possessions, vehicles, bank accounts, etc., etc. And then a gift of residue is whatever is left over from your estate, then you distribute accordingly. Number 6 is extension of executors and trustee powers. All that means is it's just a bit of legal wording that we need to put in to make the person reading the will that we've understood what the executors and trustees powers are, and we're declaring that. And then the 7th and the 8th clause is called the attestation clause. All the attestation clause is you're attestating and witnessing that this will was written correctly, and you're of sound mind, and you understand exactly what was put inside the will. And then you sign date, and you need 2 witnesses at the end. Next slide, please. So just a few things to consider before I end the presentation. First thing is the type of ownership properties have. Now, even myself, I've just recently bought a property, and I was asked the same question by the conveyancing solicitor. What type of ownership do you want to have? First one, the 2 most common types are joint ownership and tenants in common. Joint ownership, basically, in terms of inheritance, what a joint ownership means is that even though, for example, a husband and wife might own a property 50-50, they can't sell or do anything with their 50% of the share of the property without the other person's consent. So if you own a property jointly with your wife or husband, your share of the property can't go in your will, because according to English law, a jointly owned property automatically passes to the person that's surviving in the relationship. So it can't be passed via a will. The second type of ownership is called tenants in common. This is the one that we always recommend to especially Muslims, because we need to distribute our shares according to the Sharia, not according to the UK law. So tenants in common allows you to put your 50% of the property in your will, and it can be distributed accordingly. So your 50% can be transferred to your children, for example, or any other party that is required at the time. So it can be passed via a will. The other thing I wanted to touch upon was inheritance tax. Most people who come to us, they think just a basic will do the job. But then when they tell us how many assets they have, we make them understand that a simple will isn't going to do anything. We can do it for them, but the implications of that are just too high, unfortunately, because inheritance tax, just to quickly explain, there's the allowance that every single adult gets in this country is £325,000. So for a married couple, the total allowance is 650,000. So if you're single, anything over 325,000 is going to be taxed at 40%. 40%. It's a really high figure. So I think to not protect your estate for inheritance tax purposes is not the ideal thing to do. In fact, your children might end up cursing you after your death, because if your 40% is taken from the estate, they will obviously see that 40% could have been in their pocket. So protecting that is, in my opinion, really, really important. So sometimes just a simple will isn't going to do the job. There are other possible things we can do in terms of inheritance tax, but it's different case to case. So you'd have to get in touch with us, and we'd inshallah give you advice on that. Just the final slide, please, Shabbat. So why use a professional company like us? Because you can go to WH Smith, right, and buy a £20 packet, which you can write your will through that. So firstly, it's an unregulated market, and that's why you can actually write your own will. We would never ever recommend it, because 99% of DIY wills that I've reviewed have certain things wrong in them. I've also never seen a DIY will written correctly in accordance with Sharia law. I've never seen that. And I've reviewed at least 20 to 30 wills for my clients. So we follow the Institute of Professional Will Writers. That's the regulator that qualifies us to become will writers. We follow their code of practice, and we follow trading standards, rules and regulations as well. Just last year as well, I forgot to mention that we are regulated by the FCA as well. Secondly, we have our own compliance team at head office. So every single will goes through compliance. And what else I always mention to our Muslim clients is, if you want, well, I always advise that you should, in fact, go to your local Maulana or your local Imam or scholar or any scholarly person you know who might understand inheritance, and you can get our wills reviewed with them as well. We know the basics of Islamic will writing, but we don't know certain complications that may arise. So it's always important to involve someone like Sheikh Salim, for example. The third and final thing is, you'll be offered a bespoke service. So like I said, each case is different. So we offer free, no obligation advice for inheritance tax purposes, protecting vulnerable people. I've got clients who have got disabled children, for example. We set up different types of trusts for them so they get what they are entitled to. We can also write you a thorough estate plan. And the main thing as well is that it's cost effective in the long run. If you do a DIY will today, there's a 90% chance that within a few years or within 10 years, it's going to be need to have a look at, reviewed by a professional, and eventually get changed. So you may as well do it properly the first time. And then just the final slide has my contact details. So if you need to contact me for any advice, I don't charge a single penny, even if you take an hour of my time. Inshallah, I will help everybody out as much as I can. Don't feel obliged to go ahead with us just because we've given you advice. There's no issues with that. So my contact number is on there as well. And my email as well, in case anybody wants to email me a question. I can also email these slides over, or I can email an information pack. There's loads of different types of things we can do to offer free advice. However somebody wants to do it, we can inshallah cater for that. And just a point on, you said due to COVID, we're only doing online meetings. I have many elderly clients who can't have that conversation via Zoom or via a phone call. So for them, with social distancing measures, we have checked with the council, we are allowed to have face-to-face meetings with them. However, we always prefer that the meeting is done at the office instead of going into their home. Because going to their home, we are risking them more. Rather, if they come into our office, we have the measures already in place. So inshallah, we can cater for them.
That's great. That's mashallah.
That's what I've prepared. And again, if anybody wants it, inshallah, I can email it across or send it them.
Yeah, inshallah, Officer, what we're going to do is that basically we'll take that presentation off you and we'll forward it on to all our members of the Deepdale Community Association and me as well, and we'll forward it on. तो तमाम हज़रात से गुजारिश है, आपने जैसे देखा कितने कॉम्प्लेक्स सिचुएशन है, तो इसलिए ये ज़रूरी है, आपने लास्ट वीक भी शेख साहब से भी सुना कि ये फ़र्ज़ है और बेसिकली हलाल हराम का मसला है यहाँ पर, तो दोज़ख और जन्नत का मसला है यहाँ पर। अल्लाह सबको माफ़ फरमाए, मगर हमने तैयारी करनी है, तो इसलिए हम सब डिटेल तो नहीं आपको उर्दू में एक्सप्लेन कर सकते या गुजराती में या पंजाबी में, मगर ये मुख्तसर गुजारिश है कि हमारे पास ये एक्सपर्ट हैं, हाफिज साहब उर्दू भी बोलते हैं, पंजाबी भी बोल लेते हैं, तो इसलिए फ़ायदा उठाएं और फ्री एडवाइस दे रहे हैं। तो ये तो लीगलिटी भी सब आपको मिल रही है और माशाल्लाह हाफिज़ कुरान भी हैं। एंड वन थिंग ब्यूटीफुल हाफिज साहब said to me, he said, I did this because I wanted to help the people and I got into this field, and it became a profession as well, and basically is helping people as well. So Jazakallah khairan, Hafiz Sahab joining us. Sheikh Salim has joined us, mashallah. Jazakallah khairan, Hazrat, you've been listening in the background as well, I know, at backstage. Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mashallah, you know Hafiz Hassan was your student once upon a time, and
mashallah,
at your Saturday classes in your fiqh, mashallah. I don't know if you recognized him.
Mashallah, I've not really noticed, but alhamdulillah, it's good to see you.
At Raza Mosque as well. So, Sheikh, you've been listening in the background. Just before we go to you, there's just two questions, Hafizah, if we could quickly do them questions, because they're quite simple. You did touch on them, and I think basically answered in your presentation. But it said, what is the cost of a normal will? Is it standard charge, or to make a will, Islamic will? And the other thing, sorry, with the question adds, sorry, the other part of the question is that also, do you give advice according to Islamic and legal rulings, and do you deal with both Islamic wills and normal wills, like non-Muslim makes a will, or a Muslim person makes a will not according to Sharia, just their own wills? So you deal, I think from your slideshow is quite clear, but on the costing, if you can just elaborate a little bit.
In terms of the costing, it really depends on the case itself. I mean, more solicitors try to offer a fixed price. We try to avoid that because each situation is different. So I don't want someone coming to me with a £2 million estate and expecting a £150, £200 will, because their cost might be a lot higher, because we have to deal with inheritance tax issues or capital gains tax issues, etc. So I'm not avoiding the question, but I'd rather somebody contact me, give me basic details, then I can advise on the price, inshallah. And in terms of the second question, we do cover both the English side and the Islamic side. But like I said, I just want to make it clear again, we are not the Islamic experts. And that's the reason we've got Sheikh Salim on the event as well.
Yes, you requested that.
We do have people on our panel that we can refer to. I speak with at least 4 different ulama around the country, not just in Preston. And I do refer to them. And inshallah, from now, I'm sure Sheikh Salim won't mind me referring to him as well. So inshallah, we do cater for both the Islamic side and the English side.
I mean, Sheikh Saab, just one thing I wanted to, Hafiz Hassan said that, look, nikah is not recognized. But, it's the same question. What about somebody's living together as a, like they're not married, officially married? Is that not a common law wife? Is that nikah not would be recognized in the same way, Sheikh?
Well, you're referring to me for an English law.
No, nikah. I mean, the nikah.
Islamically, obviously, the nikah and Sharia-wise, they have to adapt. They have to put their will according to that. But what Hafiz Saab is saying, and absolutely agree with him, in the text that when it comes to English law, what we do find is a lot of people, especially if the couple are both of them are from the UK, the lads from the UK, the girls from the UK, they get the nikah done in the masjid. So from a Sharia perspective, it's absolutely fine. The nikah's done. They are, spouse, husband and wife. However, from a legal perspective, that nikah is not recognized by English law that they are husband and wife. And therefore, if one of them was to pass away, they can provide a nikah certificate, but that's not going to stand in a court of law to show them that they are a husband and wife. And if they're not husband and wife, then according to the court of law, there are certain rules that they will not be able to obtain because of that. So it is important from that perspective, from lots of different perspectives, that they do get their registry done as well at the same time. But when it comes to the Sharia wise, yes, she's his wife and she's entitled to, whatever the Sharia says she's entitled to, or vice versa.
Okay, Afzab, just on that note then, so what is that as you said, if somebody lives with you, right, and they might not have done the civil partnership and they've not registered as a husband and wife, but they are living together, like I think it's called, is it the common law wife? And what about that? Is that then if there were inheritance made like that, is it not the same like in the nikah sense that it's like living together?
One thing I want to make clear is you can, according to English law, you can give your estate to whoever you want.
Yeah.
But if you're excluding somebody from your will who might be entitled, they can contest the will. So in terms of your question, you can actually add that person in your will, no problem. But if you pass away without a will and you're not married, that person then has to claim for the estate. Automatically, they won't be entitled because you're not married. So if they want something from your estate and they want to do it legally, not fraudulently, then they have to contest the estate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a major issue, and obviously it benefits all. So we should do that. Do the nikah as well, and get it yourself registered as a civil partnership as well. I mean, one thing, the question come here, and Sheikh, you can answer this, and Hafizab, that on the legal side, but on the Sharia side, now it's saying that people can contest your will. Somebody who's depending on you, right? It's not your relative. It depends on you. I've said if somebody depends on you to give him money or monthly, whatever, and he's dependent on you, and you died, and you made an Islamic will, right? But because he contested it and he gets something out of that will, are you going to be going to for that? Because you've done this.
No, if you've done your will and you've left your will according to the Sharia, and someone overrules that, whether they use the law of the land to overrule that, then you are not sinful. That person is sinful for stealing from your estate. Okay, even though they may feel they're entitled. Now, a common one for that, I'll give you an example, is an adopted son or a daughter.
Yes.
Right? Because according to the Sharia, they are not part of your estate. They are not heirs. An adopted son is not an heir. Adopted daughter is not an heir. If you do not leave, you can leave up to 1/3 of your estate to that person. That's where the bequest we talked about last time came in.
Yeah.
So you could choose to leave them a certain amount of money behind because they are your adopted son, etc., or the one that you looked after, or maybe your brother's son, your brother passed away and you chose to look after his children, for argument's sake. Yeah. Now, according to the law of the land, if you've been looking after them all your life or once they were minors, they technically have an entitlement. They are dependent on you. So therefore, they could challenge your will and turn around and say, I am entitled to some of my uncle's estate. Or if it was your adopted, if you are the father, now, if you are a legal father, according to the law of the land, Sharia-wise, you're not. Okay, but it's law-wise, you are the father of the adopted son, and therefore the son could take the whole lot in certain circumstances. Okay, because he might be the only son available, and the rest might be brothers or whatever. The Sharia might turn around and say he's no children. Yes, he's got an adopted son, but that doesn't count, and therefore his will be given to his brothers or his sisters or his cousins, depends on how the estate falls. The point is, at that point, the adopted son could walk in and say, it's not going to my uncles, etc. I'm the legal son of this individual, therefore I will have the full entitlement of this estate. He would therefore challenge that will, and he will probably win as well. You know what I mean? But Sharia-wise, he's not entitled to that unless you bequest him something up to 1/3.
So the best thing is to be fair. Sorry, Hassan, Hafizab, on the same questions, that person who asked that question, he said, if these people, you listed few people who can contest the will, if they can, then how much protection your will, which you have wrote for them on their behalf, how much protection do they get?
As long as they can give us the 100% correct details. For example, we can't go and check whether they have a stepson or stepdaughter or 3 grandchildren or 10. We will never know that. We will only trust what they tell us. So there have been cases where a client has lied to us. Well, obviously, we can't be liable for that. If they tell us the truth from day one, then we have no doubt in terms of 100% protection. That's the whole point. And
can I just interrupt that? I do apologize, but there is something that is beyond your control. Okay.
Yes.
If a person, even if they told you the whole truth, okay, someone who feels that they can contest that will can apply for a contestation for that will to the law of the land, right? And then the judge decides whether that individual has a right to contest that will. That's not Hafizab's fault. Right, he's put the will in according to what you've asked for, and he will advise you to turn around and say, look, this is and if for example, I could leave everything to my cat, although I haven't got a cat, but just an example, right? I could leave everything to my cat, and many people do. Now, if I left everything to my cat, for argument's sake, and I know I'm of Hafizab would put that down in the will. Example, am I right, Hafizab? If I said, this is what I want, I don't care what, yes, I've got 4 children, I've got a wife. No, I want to leave it to my cat, right? Now, that will then be adjudicated, executed. But at that point, my children would stand up and say, I want to contest that will, right? Yeah. I have a right to my dad's estate. Now, Hafizab can't do anything about that contestation. That contest would and then I can't, oh, well, I won't be here, but someone, my family can't turn around and say, well, Hafizab, you said your will was 100% guaranteed. So the point is, when it comes to contesting a will, that's something that is not the will writer's fault. He can advise you accordingly, but it's ultimately the individual, if he chooses to take that to court, if he feels that the judge will listen to him. Someone could contest my property today, right? And turn around and say, I have a right to that property. Now he might not have his name on the property, etc. But if he can provide evidence to show that he has some right, he'd have to take me to court, and then the judge would decide. So please remember that the ultimate learning point here is this. There's 2 things. Number 1, you should leave a will, because the law of the land will overrule the Islamic Sharia law. Okay? That's absolutely clear. That's the law of the land. For example, I've said 270 grand will go to the wife or the husband, the spouse first, right? Then it will be given to the children. As Sharia says, only 1/8 should go to the wife, right? Or if it's a husband, 1/4. If they've got if they've not got kids, 1/2. If they've not got kids and it's a wife, then 1/4. But that's what the Sharia says. But the law of the land says, no, the first 270 grand will go to the spouse. Okay, now if you've not written a will, that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, if the wife is a religious person or the husband is a religious, he might get the money and then distribute it according to the Sharia. So there's 2 points. Number 1, leave a will, and number 2, educate your heirs on the Sharia perspective and tell them beforehand. Look, so you could tell your daughters beforehand that I will leave 2 shares for the son and 1 share for the daughter. And the daughter will say, well, that's not fair. They said, this is what the Sharia, and educate them according to the Sharia, that they will then accept that if you do contest this, then you are going to be sinful because you're going against the Quran.
Okay.
So that's the important point.
So, Sheikh, as you're on, basically, there's a question here. What about back in the days, long time ago, I was with somebody, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and there was a child born, a legitimate child, as he has a right in Islamic.
Okay, when you say legitimate child, that's illegitimate child. Illegitimate children do not have any right from the father. Illegitimate children will only have a right from their mother. What will happen is an illegitimate child is automatically assumed to be so there's 2 things here. Number 1, if the child was born out of wedlock, but she was having an affair, so she was already married, and she had a child with somebody else, then that child will be recognized as the one who she's married to.
Okay. So
does that make sense? Right. So that's the first point.
So husband and wife, and the wife has an affair. So that child is born with the wife, with the affair. The husband has to leave a share for that child. Is that what you're saying?
The child will be automatically recognized as the child of that man whom she's married to. So therefore, when he dies, he will get a share. That's the first point. Okay. Secondly, if the child is illegitimate and she's not married and she has a child, then illegitimate children do not have a share from their fathers. But they do have a share from their mothers. Why? Because it's 100% guaranteed that that mother is the father. The mother is the parent of that child. But it's not 100% guaranteed that the father is. Now you can go into arguments and we can do DNA checks, etc. But the Sharia basic rule is that.
Okay, Hafiza, what about on your side, on the legal side? Illegitimate children, can they contest the will, or basically, you didn't mention in the 4 categories who were, who could contest the will?
Yeah, so they would fall under bloodline relatives, so family members.
Okay.
They would be family members. Because the English law recognize them as both mother and father.
Yeah,
so they don't look at whether both the parents or husband or wife The UK law looks at whether they are the mother and father, so they would automatically inherit.
So how much is a chance that I make a Islamic will, get advice from Sheikh and from yourself, make a proper will, Islamic will, and somebody in the probate time? What is probate? Obviously, you just quickly touch on that, the probate period when someone can contest it, and how chance is it that my will not be contested?
I mean,
have you seen that kind of situations where there has been contest of will, and what's the success rate?
Well, if we go back to the statistics I mentioned at the beginning, one quarter of 55 to 64 years have personal experience of it, and 1 million people know of instances where the estate has gone to the wrong person. So we can't put a percentage rate on it.
No,
if
definitely.
You write a will, what the other thing we do to avoid this is we review our client wills every 24 months. Every 2 years we review their wills. So if you've bought a new property, maybe a beneficiary or an heir has passed away, we just make sure that the will is updated accordingly. So we can do our best to try and avoid that situation, but it's impossible for us to put a percentage on it and say.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, that percentage you told at the starting, that makes sense, that the money is going to the wrong people. Sheikh, you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, all I will say is, look, people generally contest wills when there's a lot of an estate. Okay, the estate is massive. Okay, if you're leaving 20 grand of 10 grand behind, generally it costs too much money to contest the will, because you have to pay legal costs to contest that will. Okay, number two, you have to be in a position where you will believe that you will win that case. Just because you are a blood relative doesn't mean you're going to win that case, because that person individually has chosen to leave you out of their will. You would have to prove that they were not in their right mind, or they were influenced by other siblings, and you would not only have to argue it, you have to prove that. Okay, so contesting a will isn't as simple as people thinking, oh, they're going to contest the will. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Contesting a will is there because for them reasons. If someone at their old age, someone wrote a will and says, oh, dad just signed this will, he wasn't well, he signed it, and then realized, and he didn't realize, but the siblings realized that, the brothers decided to take the whole lot because dad wasn't well. At that point, they may choose to contest it because that wasn't fair. In that sense, so contesting a will is like with anything. You can contest the bill of the guy that did your roof, right? Okay, but the point is, if you've agreed the charge and he's done the job, then you will have to prove in court that wasn't what was agreed and he hasn't done the job, etc. So in any situation, you can take a person to court, but it's not as simple as just because you are their husband or you are their son, you're going to, even though it's clear that you are the son, even though at that point you may still not win, because the judge might decide, yeah, but he knew you were his son, but he chose to leave you out of the will, and that's his choice.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Islamically, that's a very different scenario, because Islamically, you are contesting, he's gone against the Quran. Yeah, and therefore you have a right to it, according to the Quran. And a mufti wouldn't disagree with that. Just because I choose to leave one of my children out is not acceptable, as we said last week, because Allah will determine who gets the state.
And we have
just
to follow
put things into perspective in terms of contesting a will. Sheikh Salim is 100% right. There's no point contesting a will where someone just left a 100 grand property and there's 6 heirs already. Because I've got clients who have already spent 40,000, 50,000 pounds contesting a will, but their share was approximately 400. So you're not going to spend 40,000, 50,000 if your share is only 50,000 as well. There's no point. Secondly, just another point in terms of protecting from people contesting. We have something we can put in a will which is called the exclusion clause. You can mention in there specific people that you are excluding, which you might think might come after the will, might come after your assets, after your death. So if you mention it, putting Islamic law to one side, if we put, according to English law, if you put that exclusion clause in your full 100% mental capacity, you are saying this person is not entitled to anything. If you don't put that exclusion clause in, they have a chance to say, look, this person has possibly forgotten to give me my inheritance and I'm entitled to it. So if there's any doubts about somebody, you can put that in. That's not an issue.
That's a way of a protection. I just have one question. If somebody turns around to you and say, I don't want to, this, I know you said about honesty, that you have to tell everything and then do it. But somebody says, so just make my will and just say that, you know, when I die, after my death, everything, please see an Islamic scholar and distribute it according to Islamic law. Is that sufficient?
So for English law perspective, it's not sufficient, unfortunately.
You did present
that so many times before, because most people would just like it to do that. It's very simple. The problem with English law is it's not open to interpretation. But unfortunately, because there's different sects of Islam, even though Sheikh Salim can possibly confirm this for us, even though the shares are clearly written in the Quran, I'm willing to bet that people will still say, no, in our sect it's like this, in our Aqidah it's like this, you can't do this, the funeral has to be like this, that person who we owe money, it's not our debt to pay, etc., etc., etc. So just putting my wishes according to the Sharia law, it's not sufficient. The law of the land requires you to put specific shares for a will to be legally binding in England.
And you can do that, can't you? You can help them, advise them and get that done. You pay for that anyway, so you might as well do it properly. Sheikh, about the sects and different, you know, obviously school of thoughts as well.
Like Avisab said, look, the Quran talks about clear shares for what we call Zawil Furud, which are the fixed heirs, or Asbat, which are the remainder heirs. But there's also something called Zawil Arham, which is the mercy heirs, which we call it, and Ghairi Asbat, etc. So there's various different Sharia perspectives, and as Abisab said, absolutely, if you want to interpret something, right, you can then argue about that interpretation because your school of thought doesn't seem to agree with it, right? So that tends to happen, doesn't it, in various different laws, even divorce laws, marriage laws, salah, etc., etc. No, my wudu isn't broken because such and such a mufti who's part of a different school of thought said it wasn't. So the point here is this, that you need to take Sharia advice prior to you writing a will, in conjunction with the likes of Hafiz Sab, who will then will advise you to say, look, I'm not an expert in the Sharia, right? But what I will advise you is that, have you taken Sharia advice on this? Now, if that person turns around and said, Hafiz Sab, just write the will, leave that to me, then Hafiz Sab will just do his job, right? But the reality is he will inform them to say, and then if that person says, well, actually, I don't know what the Sharia advice is, can you please check that? So let's say, for example, they come to me, I give them an opinion. Of course, if they're not happy with that, they can go to another Mufti Sab who is recognized and say, Mufti Sab, this is one opinion, like a doctor. This is one, as long as it's same school of thought, right? When it comes to fiqh, and that doctor said, this is what I've been advised, this is what the thing is, what's your advice? And then at the end of the day, it's their soul that will then determine which advice they want to follow, that they feel is the correct advice. Or they could ask me, for example, you said this, that, and the other, please can you provide evidence of that from the Quran and the Sunnah? Example, and he could do that. So it's your job as an individual that you must make sure that your will is according to the Sharia law, right? It's not Hafiz Sab's job. He can only advise you of that, right? It's your job as an individual to make sure, because you're the one that's going to face the consequences if you do not leave a will according to the Sharia law. If then people contest it, people don't follow it, and people basically alter it, that's not your fault. You have been consciously, it's like saying you give a charity zakat money and that zakat money doesn't go to the end user because they seem to take half of it away. You weren't aware of that. That's not your fault. That's that organization that's responsible for that. In the same way, as long as you do your bit, and my advice is two things. Number one, do your bit according to Sharia law, but tell the people that are inheriting why you've done that. because they may not be unaware, they may not be aware of the Sharia law. So you can tell them, I've done this because of the Islamic Sharia law. This is what the Quran says. Do you want your father or your, to go into the hellfire? So I've got to do it according to this because this is what Allah has commanded. That's the first thing. The other very important point that people need to understand is this, that a lot of the times your inheritors don't actually even know what estate you have. Okay, so you might have 3 bank accounts, right? 2 of them no one knows about. Okay. Yeah, you got to tell the people whilst you're alive who to access and where, what you are, as every 2 years, every year, just tell them to say, people don't like talking about death. Yes, right? Yeah. Just tell them that, look, I owe X amount. I owe Brother Kamran £2,000. I borrowed it off him last week. Right? There's nothing in writing, but I owe him £2,000. It happens in our community. We lend each other money. We don't put it in writing. Okay? Yeah. That's the first point. So they know at the moment. And when you pay back, or just to let you know, I paid Brother Kamran back his money. I don't owe him any money anymore. Yeah? So tell them. I mean, there are so many million of dormant accounts that go to the government, because even though that person has left a will, the people that are looking at this, they don't know that that account actually exists. So it'll just be sat there in the background. You won't even take it into the estate. And then the bank will say after 10 years, well, no one's come for it. It's gone to the treasury. True. Yeah. So make sure that you tell your closest relatives what your financial situation is and if it's constantly changing. And if ideally, change it in your will all the time. But there may be temporary money that you borrow that you might not want to put in the will. So, for example, I go and see Hafizab and say, Hafizab, and he'll ask me, do you owe anybody money? And I say, Hafizab, I owe a friend the money, but don't worry about that. Leave that. I'm going to sort that out. Yeah. So Hafizab will say, okay, no problem. But I've got to tell my relatives that I owe that person some money. And then when I pay them that money, make sure that I've told them that, oh, that's been paid now.
Okay. So, I mean, basically education and talk about these things. That's the main thing. That's the reason.
Information. Yeah.
Forward. And we're going to request other scholars to talk about this on Friday, Jummah and places like that, because so much debt is happening around us. And like you said, Sheikh, we can't, discuss all this in 2 programs. People do courses upon it. Yeah, and you spent years studying it, and same with Hafiz, I went away to study and everything. So obviously, you're not going to get all the answers here today. So, but one question, Sheikh, is this: that is this okay if somebody writes that I want to protect my wife, right? So I say, the mother of the children. So basically, I say, until my wife's going to be alive, you can't do any sharing. If you put that in the will, you could come on that as well.
If you put that in the will, I assume, Habisab will correct me if I'm wrong, that will be adhered to. Okay? Yeah, because that's what you put. I'm talking law-wise, first of all. That will be adhered to. Okay? If you put that, so first of all, that's the law. So the law will turn around and say everything stays with the wife until she dies or whatever it might. You can even do a joint will, for argument's sake, one of the other. Sharia wise, your children, they are allowed to leave, not touch anything until the mother passes away.
Yeah, they can make that decision.
So if you tell them prior to that, look, this is what I'm going to do. Are you okay with that? And they say, I'm absolutely fine. Okay, and say, please, this is my sort of dying request. She's your mother. What she just feel as if she's protected. You can even put to the extent that you can even put to the extent that it will not be distributed unless she remarries, for argument's sake. Okay, right? And then at that point, you could say, well, actually, now everybody should get their share because she's remarrying. She's taking the money with her somewhere else. Do you understand what I mean? But whilst they're like, especially if they're elderly parents, right? And you have, sometimes you just haven't got the financial ability to do that. Okay. And therefore, Sharia wise, you can choose to disagree. So let's 4 kids, one of the kids turn around and says, there's no way I can leave that to mum because I need the money. I'm in severe debt. Because at the end of the day, it can happen. The other 3 can then choose to say, okay, we'll cough out the money, we'll give you your share, and then when mum passes away, we'll take that because that will now officially become ours because we've given you that share. Okay, so they could work it along that way.
So that's like basically out of courtesy, isn't it? But if
it is, and you know something, sometimes we want to make sure that our life partners are not left feeling that they are totally dependent on their children and their families, because all the hard work that we have done together with our life partners suddenly has gone to somebody else, and they could become homeless. And they might not become homeless, but they might feel that at any time my son could threaten me to say, look, this house doesn't belong to you anyway. Either sort yourself out or I'm kicking you out. Now, you know, we teach our children good ethics and good manners and good deen, right? But there are situations where I believe that has happened.
This happened.
So you're saying if there is doubt that could happen, a joint or mirrored will is allowed according to the Sharia. The ultimate goal is to
a joint will, Hafiz Saab, is allowed as long as the will itself is still according to the Sharia.
So the mother still won't be protected, will she, in that way? So because it's the 8th share and the brothers have all got full shares.
Yeah. So okay, so let's say, for example, for argument's sake, right? I have a wife and I have 4 children. So I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. Okay, my wife would get 1/8 of my share of the estate. Yes. Okay. So whatever I have, I own my share. She would get 1/8 of that, and the kids would get 2 to 1. So the sons would get 2 each, and the daughters would get 1 each. Okay. If I put in my will that this is how I want my estate to be distributed, however, whilst my wife is alive, it will not be distributed, and when she passes away, then all the shares will be distributed according to the Sharia, and because her children are the same as my children, for example, right? So in that sense, I've not gone against the Sharia.
Okay.
Yes, and I've requested that. So my kids will turn around and say, like I gave an example with my mother and father. My father passed away. My brother and I said absolutely no problem, right? Technically, my mother would have got 1/8, and we would have got 50-50. Okay, so I'll give you an example. If the property was worth 120 grand, then she would have got 1/8 of that. Yes, and we would have taken the rest. Where's she gonna live?
That's it. Yeah.
Right. So we decide to sell the house, put it away, and so she will feel, or she will say, look, Mum, come and live with me. Now she may not want to come and live with me.
She wants to be,
and you're forcing her because she may want to not. Yeah, she may not want to come and live with me because she, for various different reasons. It's too far away. I don't want to move out my area. I've got my friends, I've got my family, or whatever it might be. So to ensure that she will remain happy and the Sharia is also compliant, right? We just turned around and said we weren't going to distribute the will and then when Mum passes away, we're going to get 50-50 from both my dad and my mum anyway.
So it's similar in legal terms. We call that a life interest. So it's basically giving your mother the life interest to live in that property until she passes away. Then it's passed according to the Sharia.
And I think that's something that you may want to. And again, that's why it's so important that you consult Islamically, but you also consult legally. Because remember, illegal will always overrule Islamic in this country.
See, going back to interpretation. Now, Sheikh Salim, what he's just told me, other scholars have never mentioned that to me before. They've never said to me that a person the estate can be distributed on second death, which is the second person in the relationship.
So on that one, just to clarify, that's only if the inheritors are both joint children.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So in that situation, the only inheritors I've got left is the kids. So for example, if there is another inheritor, a fixed heir, then that person, you have to give them their share.
No,
the only exception is if all the children, all the heirs that are remaining are children to both the person that's passed away and his wife. So their mother and father.
Then you can't.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can't put that.
And they agree.
Yeah, because these days mirrored wills are extremely common, where someone, they know that their spouse is going to be vulnerable after they pass away, so they want to give everything to them first, and then pass everything to the children. If
So
there's
so in that point, you would leave a thing behind. But the fact of the matter is, if you, according to Islamic law, if the 4 adult children decide that no, they want their share, even though you have requested it, yeah, they are entitled to their share.
okay.
So
The only time that, so what I'm saying is, they will not be sinful for delaying the distribution of the will if they all agree, let's leave it with mum for the time being.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah,
But,
it's really good for me to know that. Honestly, really,
Yeah.
really helpful, because a lot of
Yeah.
clients have that issue.
So you can advise them that, can't you? Say, look, guys, if you want to protect keep your father happy, right? Why don't you all sit down and make that thing that, look, that don't worry about it. You know, we're happy with this. You can put this clause in, yeah, and we'll stick to that, right?
Yeah.
And they're all happy in it. They're all agreed together.
As
So
remember, this is only for children.
Yeah.
Always remember that. Yeah. It's not like if one of the, if, for example, the wife said, actually, no, give me my 1/8 because I want to remarry after. I may want to remarry.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I assume
she has a share.
If you're giving 100% to your spouse, I assume the condition is she can't dispose of any of those assets then.
Exactly, because the estate will still be distributed as if you had died at that point.
Yeah, I understand.
Does that make sense? So if one of the kids then passes away before mother passes away, that kid, that share of that child will still go to that child's estate, who will then be distributed according to that. As where, if in the normal circumstances, if a child dies before you, and then that child is cut off from the estate.
Yeah, you said that last week.
But again, consult us and we will advise you accordingly.
I just got this last question from a brother. He's asking, the husband passes away, but the wife has been working and the husband's been working and they've been paying towards the house together. But I assume what he's saying is the husband owns the house, but the wife's been contributing all her life as well. Been working, they're both working, one dies, and you know, basically what happens there.
Okay, so from I'll pass down to Hafizab in a minute from a legal perspective. From a Sharia perspective, let me tell you, who is it confirmed by the husband that we both own this property 50-50?
No.
She's been contributing towards it. Has she done it because of her gift? Or has she done it because she feels she's... if it's confirmed, right? It doesn't have to be written down.
Okay.
The writing might be different. The land register might just say dad's name or the man's name, right? Yeah. But is it confirmed between the two that this is both our property? If that is the case, because you've been sharing towards it, I've been putting towards it, is both our property, then the husband's share will be 50%. Okay. Now, as Hafizab has just said, if it's joint ownership according to from a legal perspective, then legally the children won't get anything because all of it will go to the wife. If it's tenants in common, then you can have it where you own a share. Okay. So again, that's something that you need to consult when you have your will written down, and the advice will be given to you legally and Sharia wise.
So, you know, we're coming to the end of the program. We've gone slightly over as well. So I'm not going to ask any more questions. But what we would do is, I think the main important thing is for our audience is that look at the complex of the, you know, writing a will and inheritance. It is. We might see in the Quran as simple, and we think we can do it ourselves, but it can't be done. Look, in 2 programs, and there's so many questions to be asked and answered, and it can't be done, right? It's a full law, you know. Inheritance in itself in Mirath is a full law. So basically you need to seek Islamic advice. You need to speak to the respected scholars as well. Talk to your children, sit amongst yourselves. It's like my parents are just going away. So basically when we learned that, look, you know, even a traveler should not leave if he's traveling, should not leave anything before writing a will. Is that right, Sheikh? You mentioned that.
That's right. You should, make sure that you write. You know, if you own anything,
Yeah.
then you make sure that it is written down or informed prior to you traveling,
Yeah.
because then
So
this is what happens in it.
yeah, so we spoke amongst the family and told them, look, this is very important. Like you said, it's a bit of a taboo issue, isn't it? It's like, are you talking about death and you want us dead?
Especially if the child raises it, say, Dad, what about your will? They think, oh, are you waiting for me to die?
Yeah, that's the first thing I think. So,
And then he feels insulted, and
I
so
think it's all about
that's
the deen
very
as well.
difficult.
Yeah. It's Islam as well, isn't it? It's the deen as well. And I want to question, this final question, because I know you mentioned it, but if somebody's on their which basically last deathbed, yeah. So basically, he calls all his daughters and says, "Look, these are your brother. I'm gonna done everything for you, and I'm gonna give it to my brother, to your brother, right, my son. Right? Are you all happy, right? And because obviously the father is dying, so they want to say, yeah, of course, Dad. Whatever's your last death wish and everything. So then, is he sinner? Because he's gifted everything to his that's not
but he's on marad. It's called maradul maut. Okay, on this last deathbed, there are different conditions that apply. Okay, but the reality is, remember what I said. If he's gifting, then you must gift equally.
And so it won't be sinful for not doing on the inheritance side, but it will be sinful for not being.
Yeah, but the thing is no, he will be sinful on inheritance, because to take someone out of the inheritance deliberately is also haram.
Okay. So
yeah, so you with the intention of so what you've just done there is said, I'm going to give everything to my son, but you're okay, you got a nice family, and you're okay, and you got a nice family. You have taken them two out of the inheritance. Okay, so you have committed just the same as you would have done if you'd written a will. Still haram.
We still got our next guest to come and do the last portion of the event of the Isra. But I'll just quickly hear that if brothers and sisters sit together, right, and Dad says, look, I've got two houses. One house I'm giving you to my daughter as a gift. In front of you, I've given it. That's out of the inheritance, yes? Right? But now the one house I live in there, I'm going to just give 3 portions to the 3 brothers. Can you do that?
Okay, so yeah, but Islamically, are they equal? So the house that I'm living in is worth £500,000, and the house that I'm gifting is a flat worth £50,000.
No, even if it is, just say for argument's sake, both properties are 100 grand each, right? Yeah, but the daughter is getting more in that way, though. Then
yeah, but then it's still wrong, isn't it? Because you're taking the son's inheritance away. What their haqq was.
No, you've given the daughter a gift in your lifetime.
Yeah, but you've given it with the idea on your deathbed.
No,
you've given it
lifetime. This is lifetime. That during lifetime, when they retired, they said, "Look, daughter, I've given you this house." The sons are all happy about it, right? Now, when it comes to the inheritance bit, they say, "Oh, because I gave you that house, you're all right if I leave this to my 3 sons now."
If they gift it whilst he's alive, that's one thing. But he can't turn around and say, now that when I die, only the 3 sons will get this house because I've already given you what you want, or I've given you in my lifetime. Because remember, when you die, your inheritance doesn't belong to you anymore. It's distributed according to the Sharia.
All right, mashallah. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh, for joining us. I know we've taken more of your time, but inshallah, we will talk about this subject again. I mean, as you can see, there is a lot of details which we need to learn, and it's our akhirah. On the day of Qiyamah, as the scholars teach us that everyone will be nafsi alam, and everyone is running for themselves. The father will say, "Give me one deed, I need to go save myself from the fire." The daughter might turn and say, "Dad, give me one deed because I need to save myself." So basically, that is going to be the state. Allah forgive us all. But at the end of the day, we need to prepare ourselves and talk about this subject. Death, as we learn from our respective scholars, remembers us 20 times a day. So, Bani Adam, remember, I'm a house for you where you're going to come, bring your salvation with you. And it's a detailed hadith, which Sheikh can elaborate next time. But basically, we need to prepare ourselves, sit with the scholars, sit with the experts, and prepare prepare for your akhirah, do the right thing. Inshallah, we'll come back to you, inshallah, next time with another topic. And we got last 10 minutes, we got our respected Haji Safdar Sahib will read the Nasheed and we'll do dua for all the Murahmeens who have passed away and those who are ill. And we make dua for their shifa, and those who are in difficulties and those who need guidance, we pray for them as well. At the end, we do that at the end of every program. So Sheikh, if you need to go, I know, I understand you have other commitments, that's fine. Jazakallah khairan for joining us. And same with Hafiz Sahib, Jazakallah khairan, you sponsored us. Yeah, mashallah, has made intention of donations to some of Mean Mother projects. And like I said at the starting, Hafiz Sahib, mashallah, made me really happy when he said, look, I chose this line. One of the reasons was the neglect in this area, and also obviously haq halal earning as well, but it's a good deed they're doing as well. And they're saying 100% free, basically guidance, pre-advice. Take that advice and prepare for your akhirah. Jazakallah khairan, inshallah. Hafiz, if you stay on, that's fine. We're going to do a nasheed with Haji Sadr Hussain and Brother Shahid, and inshallah then we want to salat al-salam and dua. Jazakallah khairan for that, Shaykh. Assalamu alaikum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, today program was mashallah more continuous from last week's program, mashallah. We
apologize for the length, but I think we needed them scholars and experts to speak, Brother Shoaib. So sorry.
It's very important. It's very important to learn.
Jazakallah.
And the questions, and that's what we're doing. And inshallah, we will be continuing with this topic, which is very important. We need in our life. And mashallah, learning from the law of the Sharia and the England law and the Wales law, but we should know, and the question will be answered by people. Alhamdulillah, I hope they enjoyed it and they learned something new, and if they're unsure, they can speak to their own scholars or Imam Sahib, or contact with Hassan Bhai, inshallah, Hafiz Hassan Ali Sahib, inshallah. So mashallah, Haji Safdar Sahib has joined in, and Shahid Bhai, we welcome them with muhabbat nal, pyar nal. So inshallah, 2 share of naqabat, inshallah. Then I will do a quick knot, and then I'll give Haji Sahib to do a knot with Shahid Bhai and Salatu Salam, inshallah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allah, 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 lachipal jida rakhwala e, lachipal jida रखवाला ए उनकोन मिठावन वाला ए सदियों सोने नल लग गई ये चिरतोड़ी निपावन वाला ए अल्लाह 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 चिट्ठे मेरे हुजूर दा दे राए चिट्ठे मेरे हुजूर दा दे राए उथे रहंदा सदा सवेरा ए विच कबर ते आका आखन के विच हशर ते आका आखन के इन्नू छद ते ए ते मेरा ए अल्लाह 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 जेड़ा महफिल नात सजावेगा जेड़ा महफिल नात सजावेगा मुंह मंगिया मुरादा पावेगा मुंह मंगिया मुरादा पावेगा और इंशाअल्लाह मदीने जावेगा क्योंकि तेरी नस्ल पाक में है बच्चा बच्चा नूर का तेरी नस्ल पाक में है बच्चा बच्चा नूर का तू है आईन नूर तेरा सब कराना नूर का क्योंकि सैयद आला हजरत रहमतुल्लाह ताला लिखते हैं सरवर कहूँ के मालिक को मौला कहूँ तुझे बागे खलील का खुले ज़ैबा कहूँ तुझे अल्लाह ने तेरे जिस्म मुनव्वर की ताबिशे ए जाने जा मैं जाने तजल्ला कहूँ तुझे क्योंकि पता आप नुहालांदा मंदिया नु गल्लोना होंदा कमला चिपालांदा आवाज जो से every program I always say alhamdulillah मैं वो सुन्नी हूँ जमीले मैं वो सुन्नी हूँ जमील कादरी मरने के बाद میں وہ سنی ہوں جمیل قادری مرنے کے بعد میرا لاشا بھی کہے گا الصلاۃ والسلام الصلاۃ والسلام، کیونکہ قسمت نو جگان دینے ہم الحمدللہ ہم قسمت والی ہیں، انشاءاللہ قیامت تک کریں گے انشاءاللہ قسمت نو جگان دینے، اور جیڑے میرے آقا دا میلاد منان دینے، کیونکہ بچپن سے ہی سرکار کے ٹکڑوں پہ پلا ہوں، بچپن سے ہی سرکار کے ٹکڑوں پہ پلا ہوں، میں شاہ مدینہ کے گدا ہوں گدا ہوں، میں شاہ مدینہ کے گدا ہوں گدا ہوں، نازاں ہے میری بخت پہ شاہان زمانے نا زمانہ کا سالی تحلیل سے پیمبر پہ کھڑا ہوں، کیونکہ آخری شعر ہے تو میں انشاءاللہ پیش کروں گا میری نوکری، ہر آن تصور میں حضوری کے مزے ہے، ہر آن تصور میں حضوری کے مزے ہے، گویا کہ میں گنبد کے تلے نعت سارا ہوں، کیونکہ میں نعت تیری پڑھنا، میں نعت تیری پڑھنا، میں ذکر تیرا کرنا، آقا جی ہم سب نعت خوانے الحمدللہ، ہم میں نعت تیری پڑھنا، میں نعت تیری پڑھنا، میں تیرا ذکر کرنا، اس ذکر کی برکت نال ہم سب کا قبر وسا دینا، اور انشاءاللہ یہ شعر میں نے پڑھا، میں نعت تیری پڑھنا، that's dedicated to Haji Qurban Ali Sahab who passed away. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. May Allah Ta'ala bless Haji Sahab, good person, alhamdulillah, met him many times, community میں ماشاءاللہ، آمین. So انشاءاللہ ہم حاجی کمران صاحب انشاءاللہ دعا سوال، تو میں انشاءاللہ ایک نعت پیش کروں گا، تو پھر میں حاجی صاحب کو دعوت دوں گا. صلی اللہ علیہ یا رسول اللہ وسلم علیہ یا حبیب اللہ. ہاں تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا میرے آقا، تو کجا من کجا، تو امیر حرم میں فقیر عجم، تو امیر حرم میں فقیر عجم، تیرے گن اور یہ لب میں طلب ہی طلب، تو عطا ہی عطا، تو عطا ہی عطا، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا، الہام ہے جامع تیرا، الہام ہے جامع تیرا، قرآن امامہ ہے تیرا، عرش پری ممبر تیرا، ممبر تیرا عرش پری، یا رحمت للعالمین، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا. اردو میں کیا لکھتے ہیں، تو کہاں میں کہاں میرے آقا، تو کہاں میں کرا، اور انگلش میں لکھتے ہیں where are you and where I am، تو کجا من کجا، خیر البشر رتبہ تیرا، خیر البشر رتبہ تیرا، آواز حق خطبہ تیرا، آفاق تیرے سامعی، یا رحمت للعالمین، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا. اور آخری شعر، تو ہے احرام انوار بانٹتے ہوئے، میں درودو کی دستار بانٹتے ہوئے، کعبہ عشق تو میں تیرے چار سو کعبہ عشق تو، کعبہ عشق تو، میں تیرے چار سو، تو اثر میں دعا، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا. ہم سب کو پتہ ہے شب معراج از upon us as well، تو وہ شعر میں انکلوڈ کروں گا. اے فرشتو وہ سلطان معراجی ہے، اے فرشتو وہ سلطان معراجی ہے، تم جو دیکھو کہ حیران ہو جاؤ کہ زلف تفسیر واللیل بن جائے گی، چہرہ قرآن سارا نظر آئے گا، چہرہ نظر آئے گا، چہرہ نظر آئے گا. میرے آقا امام صفِ انبیاء، نام پہ ان کے لازم ہے صلی علی. تو کجا من کجا، مصطفیٰ مشتبہ خاتم المرسلین، یا رحمت للعالمین. تو کجا من کجا میرے آقا، تو کجا من کجا، تو امیر حرم میں فقیر عجم، تیرے گن اور یہ لب میں طلب ہی طلب، تو عطا ہی عطا، تو کجا من کجا، تو کجا من کجا. الحمدللہ میری حاضر کے بعد انشاءاللہ حاجی صفد حسین صاحب فرام پریسٹن، ہمارے انکل، ہمارے جناب اور جناب ہمارے بھائی شاہد بھائی who has mashallah joined us our programs. Alhamdulillah. And Alhamdulillah that we sign Nas in the good manner. Please take us to his work. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We were Hazari inshallah. Bismillah.
آمین انشاءاللہ. السلام علیکم رحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. وعلیکم السلام. صلی اللہ علیہ یا رسول اللہ وسلم علیہ یا حبیب اللہ. مدتوں سے ہوں، مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے، مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے، ایک نظر مجھ پہ بھی سرکار مدینے والے، ایک نظر مجھ پہ بھی سرکار مدینے والے، پھر تو ہو جائے گا دیدار الہی بھی نصیب، پھر تو ہو جائے گا دیدار الہی بھی نصیب. آپ اگر مجھ سے کرے پیار مدینے والے، آپ اگر مجھ سے کرے پیار مدینے والے، مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے، مدتوں سے ہوں ایک نظر مجھ پہ بھی سرکار مدینے والے، ایک نظر سرکار مدینے سے ہوں نارے دوزخ نہیں اس کو جلا سکتی ہے نارے دوزخ بھی نہیں اس کو جلا سکتی ہے ہو گئے جس کے طرفدار مدینے والے ہو گئے جس کے طرفدار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں پوچھئے ان سے ذرا عشق و محبت کے مزے پوچھئے ان سے ذرا عشق و محبت کے مزے جو کہ ہیں عاشق سرکار مدینے والے جو کہ ہے عاشق سرکار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں لاج احسان کی محشر میں بھی رکھنا آقا لاج احسان کی محشر میں بھی رکھنا آقا امتی ہے یہ امتی ہے یہ گنہگار مدینے والے ایک نظر مجھ پہ بھی سرکار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے ایک نظر مجھ پہ بھی سرکار مدینے والے پھر تو ہو جائے گا دیدار الہی بھی نصیب آپ اگر مجھ سے کریں پیار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں طلبگار مدینے والے مدتوں سے ہوں
سبحان Allah, mashallah. Shalbai, would you like to recite?
Inshallah, this one, inshallah.
Yeah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah wa sallam alayka ya Habiballah. ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان جو رب دو عالم کا محبوب یگانہ ہے، جو رب دو عالم کا محبوب یگانہ ہے۔ کل پل سے ہمیں جس نے خود پار لگانا ہے، کل پل سے ہمیں جس نے خود پار لگانا ہے، زہرا کا وہ بابا ہے، حسنین کا نانا ہے، زہرا کا وہ بابا ہے، حسنین کا نانا ہے۔ آؤ در زہرا پر پھیلائے ہوئے دامن، یہ نسل کریم، ہاں یہ نسل کریموں کی، یہ نسل کریموں کی لجپال گھرانہ ہے، ایک میں یہی ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے، آؤ در زہرا پر پھیلائے ہوئے دامن، آؤ در زہرا پر پھیلائے ہوئے دامن، ہاں یہ نسل کریموں کی، یہ نسل کریموں کی لجپال گھرانہ ہے، یہ نسل کریموں کی لجپال گھرانہ ہے، عزت سے نہ مر جائے کیوں نام محمد پر، عزت سے نہ مر جائے کیوں نام محمد پر، یوں بھی کسی دن ہم نے دنیا سے تو جانا ہے، یوں بھی کسی دن ہم نے دنیا سے تو جانا ہے، یہی ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے، جو رب دو عالم کا محبوب یگانہ ہے، مولا نے کہا جبرائیل کعبے پہ لگا جھنڈے، مولا نے کہا جبرائیل کعبے پہ لگا جھنڈے، محبوب آمد ہے محبوب کی آمد ہے عالم کو سجانا ہے محبوب کی آمد ہے عالم کو سجانا ہے ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے رب دو عالم کا محبوب یگانہ ہے ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان زمانہ
اور پی نصیر رحمۃ اللہ تعالی لکھتے ہیں آخر المقطع میں محروم کرم اس کو رکھیے نہ سرے معاشر معاشر محروم کرم اس کو رکھیے نہ سرے معاشر. اور پیر صاحب نصیر رحمۃ اللہ why he's giving جواب as well. جیسا ہے نصیر آخر ساحل تو پرانا ہے جیسا ہے نصیر آخر ساحل تو پرانا ہے ایک میں ہی نہیں ان پر قربان زمانہ ہے جو رب دو عالم کا محبوب یگانہ ہے. کیوں آج کل نادشی میں مقطع کدے کدے ضروری بھی ہے.
جی ماشاء اللہ جزاک اللہ خیرن شعیب بھائی آپ نے بھی ماشاء اللہ حصہ ڈال دیا تو ماشاء اللہ جزاک اللہ حصہ ماشاء اللہ. اور شاہد بھائی اللہ سبحانہ تعالیٰ آپ کو سلامت رکھے تو انشاءاللہ مزید ہمیں ماشاء اللہ توفیق دے آقا کی میلاد منانے کی اللہ سبحانہ تعالیٰ ہمیں توفیق عطا فرمائے آمین یا ربنا آمین. انشاءاللہ دعا کرتے ہیں ماشاء اللہ. آج ہمارے یہ سورۃ یاسین گروپ جو ہر مہینے میں ماشاءاللہ ہمارے عمر بھائی جن کا گروپ ہے ہمارے حاجی عمر راجہ ایوب صاحب ماشاءاللہ راجہ عمر ایوب صاحب انہوں نے ماشاءاللہ یہ گروپ سٹارٹ کیا تھا تقریباً 6 مہینے سے زیادہ ہو گیا ہے تقریباً سال ہو گیا تقریباً ماشاءاللہ کووڈ سے بھی پہلے ہے تو ماشاءاللہ ٹائم کا پتہ ہی نہیں چلتا مگر انہوں نے ایک اچھا کام کیا ابتدا کی تو ماشاءاللہ ان کو اس کا سب کریڈٹ ان کو بھی ملتا ہے اور سب جو پڑھتے ہیں ان کو بھی ملتا ہے. یہ اللہ کی رحمت ہے ماشاءاللہ. اس سال ثواب کا یہ ماشاءاللہ اللہ کی خصوصاً رحمت ہے. اور ماشاءاللہ جو آپ نیکی کرتے ہیں اور ابھی یہ نیکیاں کی حاجی صفدر صاحب ہمارے شاہد بھائی نے اور شعیب بھائی نے نعتیں پڑھی تلاوت القرآن ہوا حافظ حسن صاحب نے تلاوت القرآن کیا ماشاءاللہ ادا کی. اس کے علاوہ ہمارے شیخ صاحب نے ہمیں علمی گفتگو اس میں شامل ہم تھے وہ بھی نیکی ہے وہ تو فرض عین ہے ماشاءاللہ. تو پھر اس کے بعد ماشاءاللہ ہمارے شعیب بھائی نے مکتبہ بھی سنایا ہے ماشاءاللہ. اور دین اور دنیا کی ماشاءاللہ نعمتیں اس محفل میں تھی تو وہ بھی دنیا بھی وہ تھی کہ جو دین کی ہے ماشاءاللہ. تو اس میں تمام کا ثواب جو کرتے ہیں جو حصہ لیتے ہیں ان کو بھی ملتا ہے دعا کرتے ہیں سب کو ملتا ہے ماشاءاللہ. یہ اللہ کا کرم ہے. تو ماشاءاللہ آن آف سورۃ یاسین گروپ شعیب بھائی ماشاءاللہ 2378 سورۃ یاسین were recited this month. Every month mashallah the total is going up. We're coming close to Ramadan. Subhanallah, Ramadan al-Kareem is near. Allah bless us with the Ramadan al-Kareem. Ameen. So basically we're going to include them in the Isal Sawab of all those people who have passed away, especially Brother Idris's parents, because Brother Idris has recited abundantly during this month. Then Hafiz Allah give him Jannatul Firdaus. Hafiz Ismail Mini Sahab, Hafiz Harun Sahab, also today our respected elder Haji Qurban, saying Allah give him Jannatul Firdaus.
Ameen.
As well, and then other people who have passed away from our locality, our community. Allah knows best. Allah knows everyone's names, and those who have passed away from our respected Haji Safdar's family, and Brother Shahid's family, and Brother Shoaib's family, and the respected scholar Sheikh Salim's family, and Hafiz Hassan, who took part and educated on the will, writing and inheritance, an important topic. Please do consult your experts and your respected imams as well, and prepare a will and earn the reward. Writing a will is sunnah, but acting upon a will is fard. So basically it's between halal and haram, and tomorrow we'll have to be accountable for that. So
Yes,
please
just one quick note, talk. The Mashallah Umar Bhai did Surah Yasin a group on WhatsApp, and he also, mashallah, every end of the month we do, Uncle Kamran does a special dua for the team, and Umar Bhai's family, his mother, his wife and kids. But I tell you one thing, when I started, mashallah, I'm busy as well, and mashallah, when you do wuzu, you get the energy to recite more Quran, more recitation, more Surah Yasin, Surah Mulk, whatever it is. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chosen Umar Bhai to do this beautiful work. And inshallah, in the Qiyamah, inshallah, we will be rewarded and he will be rewarded, inshallah. And ये हमारे मोहब्बत है उमर भाई का, doing a good work for the community as well. MashaAllah.
He also runs a Quran club as well, and mashallah, so he's uploaded one Quran Sharif as well. So mashallah, Isa Swab ki महफिल है, तो inshallah everyone सबसे गुजारिश है इस दुरूद शरीफ अव्वल और आखिर और सूरत al-Fatiha, 3 बार सूरत Ikhlas, please, if you can recite, and we'll make prayer for the deceased ummah and also for those who are ill and those who are suffering as well. Ameen. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيد सलीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन। या अल्लाह या रहमान, जो पढ़ा पढ़ाया अपनी बारगाह में कबूल फरमा, बात कबूली तौफीक नतरल्लाह हबीब सल्लल्लाहु तआला अलैहि वसल्लम को पेश फरमाते कबूल फरमा। उसके सदक़े तफल तमाम अंबिया अलैहिस्सलातु वस्सलाम अजमाइन, औलिया कामिलीन, सहाबा अलैहिम रिदवान, अहलुल बैत, अज़वाज मुतहहरात, औलिया कामिलीन, शुहदा इस्लाम पेश फरमाते कबूल फरमा। आमीन। या अल्लाह या रहमान, तमाम नफूस कुदसियों के तफल खुसूसन अपने लाल हबीब सल्लल्लाहु तआला अलैहि वसल्लम के तफल, या अल्लाह या रहमान, अपनी पाक कुरान के तफल इस मुक़द्दस महीने और रजब और रजब के महीने के सदक़े, या अल्लाह या रहमान, या अल्लाह या रहमान, ये तमाम नेकियां, या अल्लाह ये कुरान शरीफ पढ़ा गया, जो सूरत यासीन पढ़ेगी, या अल्लाह या रहमान, जो या अल्लाह या रहमान प्रोग्राम किया गया दीन और दुनिया की, या अल्लाह या रहमान खुसूसन दीनी इल्म हासिल किया गया, या अल्लाह या रहमान, और तिलावत कुरान पढ़ी गई, अदा की गई और सुनी गई, या अल्लाह या रहमान तेरे लाल हबीब की या अल्लाह या रखसना खानी हुई, या अल्लाह या रहमान, और दीगर या अल्लाह नेकियां ज़िक्र अज़कार अपने बारगाह में कबूल फरमा, और इस तमाम का सवाब उम्मत मुस्लिमीन मुरहमीन को या अल्लाह पेश फरमाते कबूल फरमा, और जो हयात है उनको भी पेश फरमाते हैं, या अल्लाह या रहमान, उनको भी या अल्लाह इसका अजर अता फरमा। आमीन या रब्बना आमीन। उसके बाद या अल्लाह फर्दन फर्दन या अल्लाह या रहमान, जो हमारे हाजी सफदर हुसैन के घर आने, भाई शोएब का घर आना, भाई उमर आयूब का घर आना, या अल्लाह या रहमान, खुसूसन उनके वालिद मोहतरम या अल्लाह मरहूम, या अल्लाह या रहमान, और उनके یا اللہ دیگر فیملی ممبر یا اللہ یا رحمان انہوں نے ایک قرآن شریف ان کے گروپ والوں نے پڑھ کے ملت کی یا اللہ یا رحمان وہ بھی قبول فرما یا اللہ اس تمام کا ثواب امت مسلمین میں یا اللہ یا رحمان تمام کو اس طرح ثواب کرتے قبول فرما خصوصیت کے ساتھ یا اللہ آج جو بزرگ حاجی قربان صاحب فوات پا گئے یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو بھی اس طرح ثواب کرتے ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان جنت فردوس میں اللہ مقام عطا فرما قبر کی منزل آسان فرما یا آمین یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کی جو قبر کے منزل ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان اور ان کے اپنے لاڈلے حبیب کی شفاعت کبریٰ سے مال کرتے ان کے لیے یا اللہ آسانی فرما ان کے قبر کو جنت کے بغیچے عطا فرما یا اللہ ہمارے بھائی ادریس کی والدہ محترمہ رحمہ جو گزشتہ دنوں میں وفات پائی یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو بھی اس طرح ثواب کرتے ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو جنت سے فردوس میں اللہ مقام فرما خصوصاً ان کے والد مرحوم کو بھی یا اللہ یا رحمان پیش فرما سے قبول فرما حافظ صاحب ان کے جتنے بھی یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو اور ان کے تمام مرحومین کو یا اللہ یا رحمان اس طرح ثواب کرتے ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان حافظ منی محروم ان کی قبر میں وہ کے نور عطا فرما یا اللہ یا رحمان حافظ ہارون کو یا اللہ یا رحمان جنت فردوس میں اللہ مقام عطا فرما آمین یا ربنا آمین دیگر یا اللہ جن کے نام بھول چکے ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان یاد نہیں آ رہے یا اللہ تو بہتر جانتا ہے سب کے حالات بھی جانتا ہے جو وفات پا گئے ان کو بھی جانتا ہے یا اللہ ان کی قبر کے منزل جانتا ہے یا اللہ تمام کو آسانی پیش فرما تمام کے صغیرہ کبیرہ گناہ معاف کرتے ہیں اپنے حبیب کی شفاعت کبریٰ سے مالا مال کرتے ہوئے یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کی جنت ان کی قبروں کو یا اللہ نوری یا اللہ ایمان نوری کے ساتھ روشن فرما آمین یا اللہ یا رحمان ہمارے اہل خانہ کے جتنے مرحومین ہیں ان کی بھی یا اللہ بخشش فرما خصوصاً ہماری بہن یا اللہ یا رحمان اور ہمارے یا اللہ دادا دادی نانا دیگر جتنے بھی ہیں فیملی ممبران یا اللہ جو وفات پا چکے ہیں ان کو بھی جنت فردوس میں اللہ مقام عطا فرما آمین یا ربنا آمین جتنے ہمارے سپورٹر ہیں لسنر ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان اور دیگر امت مسلمین تمام کے مرحومین کی بخشش فرما آمین یا ربنا آمین جو بیمار ہیں ان کو شفائی کلی عاجلہ عطا فرما یا اللہ یا رحمان سنا یہ 2-3 بچیاں بیمار ہیں اور ایک بچہ بھی بیمار ہے یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو بھی شفائی کلی عاجلہ عطا فرما اور جو کووڈ کے بیماری میں مبتلا ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان ان کو جلد شفائی کلی عاجلہ عطا فرما جو کینسر کے مریض ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان یا مینٹل ہیلتھ کے مریض ہیں ڈپریشن کے مریض ہیں یا اللہ جو بھی بیماری ہیں یا اللہ یا رحمان دور فرما ان کو صحت یابی سے مال و مال فرما اور یا اللہ یا رحمان ہم کو عبادت کرنے والا بنا اور ذکر اذکار ایسے کرنے والا بنا اچھی صحبت ہمیں نصیب فرما یا اللہ یا رحمان دیندار بنا اور یا اللہ علم والا بنا علم سیکھنے والا بنا عالموں سے محبت کرنے والا بنا یا اللہ یا رحمان اپنے ماں باپ کی خدمت کرنے والا بنا اور شاکر اور ذاکر بنا آمین یا ربنا آمین یا اللہ یا رحمان توبہ کرتے ہماری توبہ کو قبول فرما اللہم انک عفو کریم تحب العفو فاعف عنی یا غفور یا غفور یا غفور یا اللہ یا رحمان you love those who repent we make repentance accept our repentance اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشهيدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وانثانا وعلى من احييت منا فحي الاسلام ومن توفيت منا وتوفى الايمان يا الله يا رحمن forgive our living, forgive our dead. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, forgive those who are present and those who are not present. Forgive our male and forgive our female. Forgive our elders and forgive our young ones. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, when you give us death, Ya Allah, death. When you give us life, Ya Allah, give us life according to Islam and give us death according to Iman. Ameen, Ameen, Ya Rabbana, Ameen. Rabbi جعلني مقيم الصلاة من ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, accept our salah. Ya Allah, make us those who establish salah. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, accept our prayers. Ameen. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, forgive our parents. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, forgive the Ummat al-Muslimin. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Allah, accept all our prayers. Amin. And our du'at. Amin. Ya Rabbana. Amin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar wadkhil jannata mal abrar ya aziz ya ghaffar. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, give us the best in this world and give us the best in the akhirah. Ameen. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, protect us from the fire. Ameen. Ya Allah, and bless us with the blessings of Jannah. Surely you are the most Ghafoor Rahim, the most merciful, the most kind. Ameen. Ya Rabbana. Ameen. Inna Allah malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad barik wa sallim salli alayhi. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, जिस किसी ने दुआ के वास्ते याद कहा कर दे पूरी आरज़ू हर बेकसूर मजबूर की जब दमे वापसी हो हम सब पे लब पर हो ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मुहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु तआला अला मुहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम सल्लु अलल हबीब सल्लल्लाहु तआला अला मुहम्मद. Jazakallah khairan, Shoaib Bhai, and our respected guests. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Inshallah, we will inshallah join you inshallah in our next program next weekend, inshallah, with another topic, and inshallah with a blessing gathering as well, Afis al Sawab and Dhikr Azkar as well. Jazakallah khairan, Shoaib Bhai. Leave you